I never thought I'd hear from my ex-husband's family again. After all, I had done everything for them. Paid off their debts, cleared my ex-husband's loans, and even helped his parents keep their house when they were drowning in overdue mortgage payments. And yet, when my son came back from visiting his grandparents after a year of no contact with his father, the first thing he told me left me in shock. "Mom, do you know what Grandpa and Grandma were saying about you?" I was washing the dishes when he said it, and my hands froze mid-scrub. I turned to look at him, my 13-year-old boy, who had his father's sharp jawline but my deep brown eyes. "What did they say?" I asked, my stomach already twisting into knots. "That you ruined Dad's life. That you're greedy, selfish, and made him leave us. That you forced the divorce and stole all his money." He frowned, watching my reaction closely. "They said you turned him into a weak man and that you should have supported him better." I gripped the edge of the sink, my heart pounding. The sheer audacity of these people. And what did Dad say? My son hesitated. "Nothing. He just sat there." That hit me harder than I expected. It had been my money that kept their fancy house from foreclosure. My money that covered the medical bills for my mother-in-law's surgery. My money that erased my ex-husband's gambling debts. And yet, they had the nerve to rewrite history and paint me as the villain. I took a deep breath, trying to control the storm inside me. "You don't have to visit them again if you don't want to," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. "I don't want to," he said quickly. "They just kept saying bad things about you, and it made me really mad." That's when I knew I couldn't just let this slide. I had spent the last 2 years rebuilding my life, working hard, raising my son, making sure we had everything we needed without asking for a single dime from anyone. And now, these people, who I had saved from financial ruin, were using my son to spread their lies? No, I wasn't going to argue with them. I wasn't going to call them and demand an apology. I was going to let them ruin themselves, and I already had the perfect idea. Before I get into how I made them destroy themselves, let me take you back. I met Daniel when I was 26. He was charming, confident, and at the time, an ambitious young man with dreams of starting his own business. I believed in him, so much so that I co-signed a loan for his first business venture, a terrible idea in hindsight. His parents, Peter and Linda, always acted like I was some gold digger, even though I was the one making the steady money. They were an old-school, family values type of couple, on the surface. They believed a wife should support her husband no matter what. What they really meant was that a wife should sacrifice everything for her husband, even if it meant losing herself. The business failed, spectacularly. Daniel had taken out additional loans without telling me, maxed out credit cards, and gambled away what little we had left. When collectors started calling, guess who bailed him out? Me. I worked extra hours, refinanced our home, and paid off nearly $150,000 in debt, including money that went directly to his parents when they couldn't keep up with their mortgage payments. And how did they thank me? By treating me like I was the reason their son wasn't successful. By the time I filed for divorce, Daniel was already emotionally checked out. He blamed me for never believing in him. The reality? I had spent years believing in him too much, and now, 2 years later, they still had the nerve to blame me? I couldn't let this go, not after everything I had sacrificed. I spent the next few days thinking, not about revenge, no. Revenge is easy, but I wanted justice. I wanted them to suffer the consequences of their own actions without me lifting a finger. Then it hit me. Peter and Linda had built their entire social life around their reputation. They prided themselves on being respected members of their community, hosting charity dinners, organizing events at their church, pretending to be the perfect family. But what they didn't know was that I still had every financial record, every bank transfer, every check I had written to cover their debts, every message from Daniel begging me to pay off another loan. So I did something simple. I gathered every document, every email, every transfer receipt, and I anonymously mailed them to a few key people in their social circle: the church treasurer, the homeowners association president, the leader of their elite charity group, Each letter came with a simple note. Do you still think Peter and Linda are the people they claim to be? Then I sat back and waited. Sending those letters felt like dropping a lit match into a pile of dry leaves. I knew it wouldn't take long before the fire spread. Peter and Linda had spent years cultivating their perfect image, always talking about their moral values, lecturing others about responsibility, and boasting about how they had raised a hard-working, ambitious son. They loved being the respected elder couple at church, the ones everyone turned to for advice. But now people were starting to talk. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. The first sign came 3 days after I sent the letters. Linda's best friend Carol called me. Maria, I know we haven't talked in a long time, but I needed to ask, are these documents real? I smiled to myself before answering. What documents? I played dumb, keeping my tone light. Carol hesitated. The ones showing all the money you gave Peter and Linda. The loans, the mortgage payments. Maria, they've been telling people you were a selfish, greedy woman who ruined their son's life. But these papers say the opposite. Carol, I don't know what you're talking about, but if someone sent you proof, maybe you should believe it. There was a long pause. Then she sighed. I can't believe this. They had everyone thinking you were the villain, but now it makes sense. Peter and Linda were always so vague about their finances. I should have known something wasn't right. I hung up, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. That was only the beginning. That Sunday, I got a text from my son. Mom, something crazy is happening at church. Grandma and Grandpa are fighting with people. I raised an eyebrow. Fighting? What happened? Some guy from the finance committee stood up and asked them about the money they took from you. Grandma started crying and Grandpa got really mad. Now people are whispering and looking at them weird. I laughed out loud. These people had spent years building their reputation, but the moment their dirty secrets were exposed, they couldn't handle the scrutiny. Linda, the queen of social events, was now a humiliated fraud in front of her friends. Peter, the wise and respected community leader, was now just another liar who had exploited his former daughter-in-law for financial gain. And the best part? I hadn't even spoken to them. They were doing this to themselves. But I wasn't done. I knew that Peter and Linda cared about one thing more than their fake reputation: money. And it just so happened that I still had one final card to play. You see, before I left their lives, I had set up an automatic payment system for one of their outstanding debts. It wasn't a huge one, just a small business loan in Peter's name that he had taken out when Daniel was still playing entrepreneur. I had been paying it off monthly for them because, at the time, I thought I was helping family. Well, not anymore. I logged into my banking app and canceled the payments. A week later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I answered it anyway. Maria, you ungrateful... Peter. I let him rant for a few seconds before cutting in. Peter, I don't owe you anything. In fact, if you remember correctly, you owe me. You can't just stop paying that loan. Do you know what this will do to our credit? I smiled. Not my problem. And then I hung up. The real fun started a month later when Peter and Linda received a collections notice. I know this because Carol, now fully turned against them, gleefully forwarded me a message Linda had sent to their ladies group chat, sobbing about how they might lose their home because of a mistake Maria made. But no one in the group was buying it anymore. One woman had responded with, "Did Maria make a mistake, or did you just get caught?" That was when Peter and Linda disappeared from social events altogether. No more grand dinners. No more holier-than-thou speeches at church. No more whispering about how Maria destroyed our son's future. They were too busy trying to fix the financial disaster they created for themselves. At this point, I was satisfied. They had lost their reputation, their friends, and their financial stability, all because they couldn't keep their mouths shut and let me live in peace. But then, one last opportunity presented itself. It was a total coincidence. One day, I was scrolling through my emails, and I saw a legal notice from the bank regarding an overdue tax bill attached to Peter and Linda's property. Apparently, They had been so focused on their social downfall that they had forgotten to handle their finances properly. I clicked on the notice out of curiosity and realized something interesting. The house was still partially in my name. You see, when I helped them avoid foreclosure years ago, I had co-signed a restructuring deal for their mortgage. It had slipped my mind because I was so eager to leave them behind, but technically, I was still legally tied to that property. Now, I could have just ignored it. But where's the fun in that? I called my lawyer. "Maria, you do realize this means you can legally sell the house, right?" I blinked. "Wait, what?" "Your name is still on the contract. If they default on their payments, which they already have, you have the legal right to take control of the property and sell it to recover your losses." I sat back, stunned. And then I smiled. Peter and Linda were about to lose everything. After that humiliating public confession, I was done with them. Completely and utterly done. Peter and Linda had signed over full ownership of the house to me, meaning I held the ultimate power over them now. But I didn't want power. I didn't want leverage. I wanted distance. For years, I had been tangled in their mess, saving them from financial ruin, paying off their debts, carrying the weight of their irresponsibility. And for what? So they could turn around and call me selfish? So they could poison my son's mind against me? No, that was over. I sent my lawyer one final instruction: sell the house. Peter and Linda didn't fight me on it. They knew better than to try. Within 2 months, the house was sold. They received a small sum, just enough to find a place to rent, but nowhere near enough to keep up their lifestyle. No more grand dinner parties, no more fancy church events, no more pretending to be the wise, respected elders of their community. They had to start over, completely exposed for what they truly were, leeches. And I erased them from my life. I blocked their numbers. I deleted their emails. I refused to respond when people mentioned them to me. And most importantly, I sat my son down and told him everything. We were sitting at the kitchen table one evening, just the two of us. He had been unusually quiet since the day he watched his grandparents humiliate themselves in church. I could tell something was weighing on his mind. "You know, you can ask me anything," I said, setting my phone down. "Whatever's on your mind, just say it." He fidgeted with the hem of his shirt, his eyes fixed on the table. "Did they ever really love you?" That question took me by surprise. "What do you mean?" "Grandma and Grandpa," he said, looking up. "They always said they were family, that they cared about you. But if they really did, why would they lie about you like that? Why would they try to make me hate you?" I sighed, choosing my words carefully. Some people only love you as long as you're useful to them, and when you stop giving them what they want, they turn on you. That's not real love, that's just greed. He was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "I don't want to see them again." "You don't have to," I assured him. "It's your choice." "Even Dad?" That was the part that hurt the most. His father, Daniel, had done nothing to stop any of this. He had let his parents trash my name, let them fill our son's head with lies, and had sat silently while it all happened. And now, he was going to have to live with the consequences. "Even Dad," I said finally. "If you ever want to talk to him, that's up to you. But you don't owe him anything." A part of me had hoped, after all this, that Daniel would step up, that he would see what his parents had done and finally take responsibility for his role in it. But he didn't. Instead, he did what he always did. He ran. After Peter and Linda's downfall, Daniel moved out of state. Maybe he thought if he put some distance between himself and the mess his parents had created, he could pretend it never happened. Maybe he thought, eventually, our son would come looking for him. But he didn't, and he never will. Because Peter and Linda had done this to themselves. They had destroyed their own relationship with their grandson by choosing their pride over the truth. They had lied, manipulated, and schemed, thinking they could rewrite history. But instead, they had pushed away the only family they had left. A year later, I heard from Carol again. "You'll never believe this," she said over the phone. "Linda called me. She was crying, saying she misses her grandson and doesn't understand why he won't visit her. I didn't even feel anger anymore, just pity. "Tell her she should ask herself that question," I said simply. I didn't need to do anything else. No more revenge, no more anger. They had already lost. And I was finally truly free.